Just waiting for my cue for YouTube. Yeah, like and subscribe. While waiting, I tried to do Instagram for an app once, and God, it's terrible. I'm not made for that industry. It's very difficult. Excellent. That's all right. All right, cool. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us on this miserable Sydney evening. You braved the weather to come and be here, so that's pretty impressive. To begin with, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We'll start with a little bit of housekeeping, and then we'll get into our first talk. So, welcome everyone. I'm Zach, and along with Christian, we run CocoaHeads. So we hope you enjoy tonight. A reminder that we have a code of conduct that applies to this event as well as all kind of CocoaHeads related things, including the Slack group. And the idea is to be respectful, be inclusive, and be aware of everyone else in the group around us. You can read the policy in full on the website, but if there's any issues or concerns, please come and speak to Christian or myself tonight. A massive thank you to our sponsors. Without them, we couldn't run the events. So there's Billu, of course, for the offices that we're in, and then Procreate, who help out with our ongoing costs as well. We're immensely grateful to both of them. And as a reminder, Procreate is coming to Sydney at some point. Last I heard, it should be sometime later this year. So if you are interested in a job at Procreate, keep an eye out for that, and we'll be sure to update you when we get more information. If you'd like to scan the QR code there, you can join our Slack group, which is a place for like iOS developers to hang out during the month. It's not just for Sydney CocoaHeads. There's a lot of people from Melbourne, all around Australia and New Zealand, really. And there's some recommended channels there to join, including the Sydney one. It's mostly just me posting when the next meetup is. But the other channels are a good place if you're looking for work or you have questions about Swift or just want to discuss anything iOS development, you're welcome to do that. Let's give you a few more minutes to scan that. Cool. Yeah, as we've already said, don't forget to like and subscribe. We are on YouTube tonight. Camera's that way. Just keep that in mind. And a big welcome to first-time attendees. Who's here for the first time? I think almost half of you. Yeah, welcome. We hope you enjoy. Thanks for coming. It's good to see so many new faces as well. All right, a quick shout out to conferences and events. So some of you might already know, but the DevWorld conference is happening in Melbourne in 2 weeks. Definitely recommend getting along if you're on the fence. There's still tickets available to that one. And it's usually a very good conference with excellent talks. And I've already spoken to a few people here tonight who are going. So yeah, like I said, if you're on the fence, definitely should consider going. And then if you like what you see here tonight, the Melbourne CocoaHeads group do a very similar thing on the second Thursday of each month. And they also have a live stream. So you can keep up with that one, even if you're not in Melbourne. And I'd recommend doing that as well. Is anyone here hiring or looking for work and wants to give a quick plug, either for themselves or the company they're working from? Yeah, feel free to.
Hi, I'm Daniel, first timer. I'm not specifically, I kind of hire people. I'm looking for somebody that has experience with network extensions. If you have experience with network extensions, especially on iOS, because the macOS one works. On iOS, I have more trouble with it. I'd be happy to connect, and there can also be money involved, if, like, depending on how far it would go. So, and how well the expertise would be. Because I have a network extension basically done. It's a DNS proxy, but it's not running stable. So I'd love to get help to kind of like bring it into production.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right. Well, you know who to talk to after the talks if you're a network expert in network extensions. Anyone else? Yeah. Feel free to.
I've done a lot of UIKit, but I'm looking to Swift UI.
Cool. Another person to talk to in the break if you're looking to hire. So thanks for that, both of you. All right, looking ahead, our next meetup should be the 18th of September. That's the third Thursday. We should be here again, but as usual, I'll post details as we get closer. We're kind of now in the run home for the rest of the year. If you're interested in talking, doesn't have to be for next month, but just sometime in the next few months, please come and chat with Christian or myself. We'd be happy to workshop any ideas with you or help you over the line if you need some help kind of finishing up a talk or something. But yeah, we are looking for speakers, I think from September through the end of the year. So please come and talk to one of us. All right, so tonight we have one talk from Adam, and we don't have anything after that, so I will stop talking now and hand over to Adam. So make him feel welcome. Thank you.
Glad no one else is speaking tonight because last time Zach followed me and this was splash back.
Not how I remember it. Oh, sorry, of course. Sorry, I was supposed to do this.
All right, thank you. All right. Has anyone used IA Presenter before? Anyway, this is an aside. I'm trying it out. It's different to Keynote. It's markup based. So if my slides appear wonky, that's why. All right, so I'm here to talk about In Bloom. And before I tell you what In Bloom is, I'm Adam and I'm from a company called Stripy Sock. We're based in Canberra and we're a mobile development agency. And one of our largest clients were actually the digital partner of the National Portrait Gallery. And In Bloom that I'm going to be talking about tonight is actually their current exhibition that's on at the moment. Previously, when I was here, I also talked about a portrait gallery project, and that was one that we did for an artist called Joan Ross. This is just a demo of the experience, but the idea was that Joan's work has a lot of recurring motifs in it, and we decided that we were going to continue the collage that she does and let people build their own version of her collage by adding different elements in there. And what we're showing here was how we use multi-peer connectivity in connection with RealityKit. So on one screen, whatever you did immediately happened on the other screen. And so in gallery, that meant that people could go along and collaborate on works. And if they didn't like one of the bits, they could tap it and it would fly away. And it was only in the gallery for, I don't know, 2 or 3 months, but it was really well received, and I guess best of all, the director loved it. And so basically because of that, and prior to that, she'd had a really cool experience at Apple. We got her to try out Vision OS and Vision Pro before it launched, and she was blown away by that too. So after that, it was like, yes, we're going to do digital for everything. So how, we had to do something better and something more technically fabulous. So we followed up with two projects in quick succession. And the first was something really technical, an 16-bit video game. So yeah, it wasn't quite AR, but it was so much fun. And we worked really closely with the artist, who is an Indigenous artist. His work took up the whole front space of the portrait gallery, and we took some of the motifs, some of the stories that he had in that artwork, and decided to convert it into a game. And again, this was just for Canberra's Enlighten Festival, so it was only meant to be there for like a week or two. But we had people lining up to use it the whole time. So the director decided to just leave it out the front of the gallery for the entire stay of that artwork. Yeah, so we used SpriteKit here, but it was really interesting to then have to do external monitor displays, external controllers, external audio, and sort of tie that all in together and then wrap it into this funky little box. The second project in quick succession was actually a RealityKit based thing, but again, it was very lightweight. And the idea was we had an artist called Tom Roberts come in. He did all of these portraits on the wall. They were what he imagined the people that he heard on the Sydney train voiceovers, what they look like. And so that was, you know, an art in itself. But then he did the videos of what he remembered them saying, and, you know, something was lost in translation there. So he was recording his own voice of going, "Oh yes, I'm now coming back to Central Station and I'm the big blue train." And because we had the voices and the animations, we were able to then pair that up to this experience. So when you held it up, you got to hear, got to see not only what Tom imagined they looked like, but you also got to hear what he thought they sounded like. So yeah, technically this was really simple. Like basically we're just looking for an AI image anchor, and once we found it, we were replacing it with a 2D plane and just applying a video material over the top. And we've been using ARKit and image anchors since about 2019. I think we implemented our first version. But what this showed us was that you have to be really accurate with your sizing if you want to be doing overlays like this, and you have to do your color matching and everything perfectly. So it really helped us to fine-tune what was needed there. The other thing about this experience is people would come in. This was just one wall in the gallery. So they would come in, they would pick the iPads up, they would read the instructions, and they would start watching. If they didn't know what they were supposed to do, if they moved the iPad back down, it would give them instructions and sort of a hint of what to look for next. And moving it back up, then they'd go back into the scanning mode. So we were just using orientation there. Really, you know, it was transparent to the user. They just went, "Oh, this way I get the instructions, this way it's up." But it's one of those cool little features of mobile app development, I guess, where you can lean on these cool technologies to do something that makes life easy for the users. But yeah, in Bloom, the thing I'm actually going to talk about tonight was a whole different beast. So it's not just one artwork or one artist, but it's a whole exhibition that takes up half the gallery. And we were tasked essentially to build a digital component to that exhibition. Our audience was going to be families and kids, but still had to make it sort of appeal to everybody. And we had 6 weeks to build it. So I don't know how you guys work generally, but 6 weeks. It's actually pretty common for our portrait gallery works, but yeah, it's not a whole lot of time. And that includes, we've got such a fantastic relationship with the gallery now that they don't come to us with a solution. They come to us with, we have a problem, or you know, we have this exhibition, what can we do? So we're in a really privileged position there, but it means that we've got to do all the thinking as well as the development. And so we had that experience interacting with the 3D objects from the Joan Ross project. We'd refined our image anchoring with Tom Roberts, and with Inferno, the video game, we realized that people just want to come and play games when they visit galleries. And so we started kicking around ideas of what we might do with this, this exhibition. So the exhibition, all of the artworks were linked by a common theme, and that was they all had flowers in them. So we thought, hey, maybe we could like do virtual animations of flowers popping up from between the portraits. We thought about taking those butterflies and bees from the Joan Ross stuff and just having them follow you as you go through the works. We thought, hey, maybe you can go and pick those flowers out and make your own bouquet. And then someone pointed out, hey, one of the featured artists' works is all about challenging traditional male roles in Pacific Island cultures and by placing flowers in their hair. So let's do that. And we sort of brought that back to, first principles and go, why have a digital experience at all? And that is to engage with the artworks within the gallery and to extend and explore portraiture generally. So with the Joan Ross project, I really, because they've got all these little bits and pieces of stuff in their artwork, I really wanted to have like a treasure hunt type thing like that where you could collect it all. Joan's whole commentary was how white colonialists would come along and take things from everywhere. Exactly. So it was a bit on the nose for Joan, but not here. No. So usually this is actually really hard with portraiture because you don't really have common elements, but the fact that we've got this whole exhibition that's tied together with common elements gave us a reason to do it. It's also something that can only be done in the gallery. It's not like you can take this at home and have that experience. And at the same time, kind of like the idea that people could create their own portraits. As a standalone experience, that's something you can do anywhere. We can do that on social media. We can do that with filters and things like that. But if we tied it in with this idea of the treasure hunt, then thought maybe, we had something there. And so that we formed a rough outline of the experience. The idea that visitors would pick up the iPads from the exhibition entrance. They would search the works for the flowers. They'd then use those flowers to create their own portraits. And somehow they would get a copy of that portrait. There was 80 or so portraits in the exhibition. So we thought, right, we're going to just limit it to 11 works. So it's not just too hard to manage. And that'll just keep the whole experience tight. And with those sort of constraints, we could actually start prototyping. So I decided to tackle the hardest bit first, which was the portrait making. So as a starting point, I took Apple's face painting code example and just modified it to see that I could give myself a virtual face tattoo. And you can see here, even with this really rough example, like as my face crinkles, that tattoo crinkles as well. So I adjusted a little bit of the opacity and the blending to sort of make it sit on my face more naturally. But yeah, that came together really quickly. Face tattoos themselves just weren't going to cut it though. So I moved on to the next step, going back to the 3D objects, and thought, right, I might want to place those on my head. And you can see here, RealityKit gives us these really cool things. So that color on my face is changing as I move. It's linked to my smile there. So as I smile, the color changes. But you can see up around the eyes, there's some really weird things going on there. And it turns out there's multiple ways to do stuff when it comes to augmented reality on iOS. When you're doing this sort of stuff, I actually should take this moment to say, I'm not an expert in this, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. So with augmented reality on iOS, you sort of jump in between RealityKit and ARKit. ARKit is like the brains of the operation. It sort of gives you what's going on in the world, and RealityKit gives you this way of compositing all the cool stuff on top at a high level. I'm sure TC and Gavin could probably describe that a lot better than I could. So in the context of, say, doing the face tracking, we could either look at an AR face anchor, and then from that we could derive a mesh that we could create a RealityKit entity from. Or we could use RealityKit's scene understanding to just say, hey, is there a face in this? And give us back a face entity. I found that probably my coding just resulted in that bad mesh there that resulted in those glitches. But at the end of the day, I went with the RealityKit option, the scene understanding option. What that did mean is I didn't get those little blend shapes, like the ability to see what my eyes were doing and mouth was doing, but for the purpose of this, it was fine. The other limitation in ARKit, so again, these are controlled by my smile. ARKit supports this thing called occlusion. So if you say this is a virtual object and you're watching as I walk in front of it, ARKit's smart enough to mask that off and make it look like it's disappeared behind me. We don't get that with face understanding, face tracking, sorry, ARKit's face tracking. It must technically be possible because, you know, when you're using FaceTime and you blur the background and all of that, it's using true depth camera, so could do it, but it was, you know, 6 weeks we had to do this, so I wasn't going to dive down that. What that ultimately meant was that it was sort of limited with how the 3D objects were going to sit on my face or sit on the user's face. So I decided that those would be predetermined. We'd just decide where they would go. Another benefit of that was we didn't then have to onboard the user and show them how to pinch and twist and do all the rest, use those complex gestures.
You still have the mask on in that one?
Yeah, well, that's a really interesting thing that because I'm using, I have a face entity there, but because I haven't applied anything to it, it's applying what the camera sees as my face. So that's where you see the rows and everything disappearing behind my face, but not the rest of my head. So yeah, it's a little bit creepy. So while we could find 3D assets for a lot of the flowers and the artworks, but yeah, some of them were quite figurative. So we decided that we have some sort of combination of 3D assets, face painting, and stickers that you could stick on to make your portrait. So yeah, I spent way too much time doing this, as you can see. So that's essentially the portrait making component of the experience. The flower finding component came together relatively quickly because it was pretty much based on what we were doing with the Tom Roberts stuff. So you can see here, you know, we would go around the gallery. It would sort of glow a little bit, and then you would tap it, and it would come out, and it sort of falls down into your inventory. And I threw this one in for everybody to just get really frustrated because they have to find a red flower on this wall. So as you can see, as you tip the iPad down, it shows you what you've collected so far and how many you have left to go. And you know, you tap on it if you want to get hints. So the cool thing is, just straight out of the box, didn't have to do anything extra. It worked with video as well. So that was kind of a freebie. And so that we kind of had the bones of the experience there. We needed to have a bit of an explanation of what you needed to do in the app. So initially we had this sort of verbose onboarding, both at the start of the go and find the flowers experience, and then, hey, now it's your turn, create your portrait. And that was somewhat tedious, so we did sort of bring it back. So no one reads the full instructions. We just had a really quick, a lot of instructions here to get started. And then you're into it. And then for the portrait making side of things, we went for tip-based instructions. I'm using iOS 26 there, and it's a bit of a glitch. I did initially use TipKit for this. However, there was some issues with TipKit, which I'm happy to go into in more detail if anybody's interested when you ask questions afterwards. But in the end, it just meant that I had to go for a bespoke solution. The one thing that was sort of left that we hadn't really figured out was, great, they can make their portraits now, but how do we get it to them at the end of the experience? This experience runs on shared iPads, so airdropping, sending it via message, whatever you'd usually do through a share sheet just wasn't an option. We considered creating an endpoint, so we could just get them to enter in their email and it would send off that way. But we kind of like the idea that you might take away a physical product at the end of this. So we thought, great, let's see if we can print it. But again, we couldn't expect somebody to go through the share sheet process of selecting a printer and making sure it's ready and all the rest. But there's an API for that as well. So we were able to set that printer connection up once, and then the UI just shows them a button to print, and that's the end of it. So what we did do though, that if the printer dropped out for any reason, it would fall back to a button that brought up a share sheet, so at least they didn't lose their artwork. And I'll just wait for this guy to finish his portrait so we can... And so again, we were using sort of progressive revealing of those tips, so we weren't overwhelming them as much as possible. So they select their portrait, they hit print, and that's done. And there's the end result that they get. So this launched, as I said, we had 6 weeks to do it. We did meet that timeline just. We did hit, we hit issues along the way, as you can imagine. So we had technical issues, just that RealityKit versus ARKit. That's not really an issue as such. It's just me needing to learn more. Having the face tracking configuration or occlusion, not both. Again, that's more on me, but it would have been cool to be able to create virtual backgrounds and things like that, but just not within the time frames. And then ran into the problems with TipKit, but then worked around that as well. Logistical, the big thing here was the App Store review process. Again, this mostly falls back onto me. I gave it a week to submit, and we got a bunch of this sort of usual rejections maybe. But then we came back saying, hey, you're using true depth, but we can't find true depth in the app at all. I'd provided a whole video of the whole experience. So I went back and explained, oh, we're using the front-facing camera. Is that what you mean? And then sort of came back, went, wow, we need more information on what sort of data you're collecting on the true depth. And there was a lot of backwards and forwards on that, and ended up having to get the portrait gallery to update their privacy policy. Because I think this is actually a good thing, but Apple were very sensitive about the idea that you might be collecting people's facial data. And so I kind of feel okay with that, because it means that other apps are going through the same thing if they're going to be collecting my facial data. And then finally, there was behavioral, like the user side of things. So we were getting some people getting really frustrated because they couldn't find all the flowers. So that's why we started putting those hints in there, and we put progressive reminders in that side of the app, where after a couple it would say, hey, you can go and create your portrait, just to let them know that they didn't have to collect all of them. We did have people, no flowers, no worries. We had some people just come in along and go, oh, I'm going to take a photo of myself and print it out. And, that's lovely that they want to take a photo of themselves, but it wasn't really an intent. So, we had that progressive disclosure there with the portrait maker, where we didn't actually show the capture button until they'd started creating their portrait. And there's one for grandma too. Initially, we just opened it up so they could do as many prints as they wanted. And they did. Canon's a sponsor of the portrait gallery, so they're very generous with their stuff, but it works out to be about $5 a pop. But more than that, the printers were just, it was one printer, and it was just getting bombarded with requests. So that's why we're back to back. So just having one, so you take the time to select. So yeah, that's pretty much the experience. We are still working on it. This is one of these cool things that will be open until next year, so we get to keep building on it. So, I mean, you might have seen there in that onboarding, the graphics were really basic. So, concentrating on things like that to make it more inviting. And also, as far as the printing side of things goes, we're developing a bunch of little portal stations that they can go to. In some of our other apps for the portrait gallery, we use sort of this tap gesture to pair iPads and things like that. So we're using, I can't remember the framework off the top of my head, but it's basically a nearby communication thing. So we're using that via low energy Bluetooth to start a connection, and then we're using multi-peer connectivity to transfer the data over. So basically you'll have this experience where you go and tap the iPad on a magic black box and out will spit your artwork. So you won't even have to print that button. And it means that we'll have printers all over the place. So, you know, we won't be overrun with just one printer. And of course, we'll be watching all the users and trying to change it and make it better. So yeah, this is a work in progress. So that's it. Thank you. Yeah.
Was there the functionality in the app to find out what flower you...
Yeah, I should. I've got the app here if anyone wants to play with it later. But the basic functionality is just, it does tell you what the flower is, but basically it is just to find it and get it. That was sort of a fun discussion sometimes of going, no, it's a gerbera, no, it's a chrysanthemum. Just having pointless arguments over things. And when we were having that discussion, the flower was so blurry that you couldn't tell anyway. And then you had things like that red one on the wall where you had 1,000 of the red flowers. I think that was based on a flower, but obviously it's not a real representation. And the same with the poppy that's next to the queen. So you sort of had to use a little bit of creative license there.
How's this distributed? I think last time you mentioned they're running on
managed iPads.
Yeah, and then you mentioned App Store review. So is it an unlisted?
No, so this is most of the gallery apps except for the public-facing one are distributed through an MDM into managed iPads. But the way we do it now, we have a business account. It goes through the standard App Store review process. But then when it gets approved, instead of being distributed to the world, it just gets distributed to a particular business. So that's a really good I think that's just the preferred method now if you want to distribute to your business. We have had other clients where they have third parties that use their software that aren't on a managed device. So that's where an unlisted app is a better option. But generally, yeah, this works really well.
I'm really happy it was about flowers and not bloom filters, because when I read it, I was like, is this mostly about bloom filters?
I could apply that if you like.
So interesting to hear about TipKit.
Oh, yeah, look, I'll go through it briefly. Like, TipKit, it was actually, when I was originally thinking about it, it actually works really logically. In iOS 18, you've got this idea of tip groups, and so when you load your view, you just specify what tips are going to appear. And then as they're invalidated, you've got an async stream that says, hey, that one's invalidated, move on to the next tip. But if you tap the close button, it's invalidated. If you tap off the screen, nothing happens. So there's no indication to TipKit to say that has gone away, so that stream's never updated. And so when we're going, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, if they tap off at step 1, then 2, 3, 4 is never shown.
Same problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's annoying. In our case, it was okay. We could set like a max display limit or whatever.
Yep.
But it might not.
Yeah, and I think that the other difficulty here is because this is an app that you go through and do something as a visitor, then you end the session. It's not like you're killing the app state. The next person has to come through. And I mean, TipKit, as I said, is pretty intuitive and has all these great rules and rule structure, so we can tap into that. But yeah, that combined with that dismiss issue. Yeah.
So RealityKit and ARKit, where are you using which? And like, if you have an application and you wanted to know which one to use, are you always using them together?
Yes, yeah, most of the time. When Vision OS launched, it had this lovely thing in SwiftUI. It had a reality view where you could basically do everything in that reality view without having to know anything about ARKit. So all of your events happened as RealityKit scene events. So if an anchor was attached or an image appeared, whatever, you could get callbacks for that. When that functionality, when that launched on Vision OS, wasn't there on iOS. So we still needed at the time to do AR view representable. When we got reality view in, I think, iOS 18, that made things a lot easier, but more often than not, you had to rely on AR anchors and things like that. Yeah, well, this is, yes, I would have thought so, and I would love to see everything just rolled into RealityKit. And this is where I reiterate that I'm not an expert on this. So, but I think in the latest, in WW25, there was a bunch of, one of the new things was in RealityKit, we now get callbacks when AR anchors are added back into the scene. So it seems more like we're just getting better integration with ARKit rather than getting rid of it. I think ARKit sort of sits at a lower level, and RealityKit now, Reality View, and everything we do in SwiftUI is sort of much higher. Yeah, but it's, reality, going back to that, the video game where I was using SpriteKit, it used the same sort of concept of entities and components and things like that you have in RealityKit. ARKit doesn't have any of that sort of stuff. That's not what it's designed to do. So when you're doing models and entities, you're sitting at that RealityKit layer.
Cool.
Yeah.
And are you doing model stuff? Like, you're not meshes?
So the meshes that I was doing were just meshes for just RealityKit meshes. We didn't delve into metal for that. However, for the that thing I was talking about with the printers where you go and tap, I've wrote some metal shaders to simulate what the print style looks like. So I took the resultant image, broke it up into CMYK, and then basically did some effects on that to make it look like it was printing on screen. And that was done with metal shaders. So that was my first real foray into that. Yeah. And it's, this is where vibe coding comes in, because it was so nice to throw that at Claude and go, I know nothing about metal shaders. Can you write me one? And yeah, it took a bit of tinkering, but yeah. Cool.
Thanks again, Alan. Another round of applause.
All right.
Great talk. All right. Well, thanks for coming tonight, everyone. Good to see everyone, and we hope to see you again next month. So get home safe. We'll be around for a few more minutes if you want to stay for a chat. Otherwise, yeah, see you next time.